morning, everyone. January 16th, 2026. I can remember a time when didn't think we'd make it. Didn't think the world would even last that long. It's kind of funny now when you look back and wow, we're going to party like it's 1999. You know, I wanted to talk to everyone today a little bit about what's going on in the world, but especially kind of with all the craziness going on, there's a lot to be talked about. This is the term of, like the 4-year term of a president that's probably going to make people the most rich on the news media and like probably going to be the most controversial in U.S. history with all the craziness going on. But I'm not really going to talk about Iran today and what's going on there. You know, I might hit on it a little bit. And Venezuela, but I'm going to talk about what's basically kind of going on right here, you know, in the United States. In Minneapolis, people are being gaslighted by this rogue regime. Basically, that's what it is. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. You can look and see. And, you know, when I say, you know, oh, we're going to party like it's 1999, well, that tells you a lot. Like, I'm not Gen Z, I'm Gen X, you know, so I'm a little older. But, you know, that doesn't mean that I sit around and watch Fox News and then, like, I'm a cuck for this administration by any stretch of imagination. I don't. You know, I've talked about Trump derangement syndrome and how it only affects people that have a brain, because if you don't have a brain, you believe in everything this moron's doing, you know. But if you have a brain and you see the things he's doing and you listen to him talk for about 5 minutes, man, it does something to your mind. You need medication, you know. Like, you just, you know, it's like, but when I went to school, that being said, you know, we had teachers that taught history and geography and different things, and we had to learn, you know, to be able to pass the class, like history class, things like that, U.S. history. We had to learn what the Constitution was. We had to know what the Bill of Rights was. And I think there's a lot of people, even including like politicians that people are voting for, that don't know anything about that. And it's like, how can you take an oath to defend with your life and to uphold the Constitution when you don't know anything about it? You don't even understand it. You probably never even read it, you know. And I've seen Donald Trump do, I think it was Jake Tapper or someone was in there, and he was in the Oval Office, and he's like, oh, that up there's the Bill of Rights. He was showing him around the Oval Office, you know, the place where you had to put all the gold, you know, everything's got to be caked in precious gold for Donald Trump, you know. But he said something about the Bill of Rights, and Jake Tapper, you know, asked him what it means to him, and he's like, well, it means just like exactly what it says. It's about, you know, it's a bill like about peace and love and unity, and I was like, what the hell? This is the people. This is a person that people actually went out and put a check mark by his name, and he doesn't even know what the Bill of Rights is. What's up? You know, it's like, what's up? That right there alone, as far as I'm concerned, period, disqualifies him. Period of being a president of the United States. If you don't know what the Constitution is, you don't know what the Bill of Rights is, you know, how could you say you're going to uphold it? And if you don't know what it is, then you're going to trample all over it. You're going to shit all over it. You might as well tear it up and throw it away, because you're going to violate everything that it's about. You know, if you don't understand the law, if you don't understand that, like, it's illegal to speed down the street if the posted speed limit is 65 and you're going 85, then you're going to be going 85, you're not going to care. You're going to do whatever you want to do because you don't understand what those signs alongside the highway mean, you know? So, like, and that's basically it. But, you know, I had to learn that, you know, to the point where we had to write it, you know, write essays and things about what it means and what it means to us and our interpretation of what we thought. And then our teacher taught us what it was really about. And the Constitution, for all those that doesn't know, way back when, was what established our government and the different elements of establishing a government. Like, there's going to be Congress, there's going to be a judicial branch, there's going to be all of this. And when they got that done, even back then, not knowing in the future what was going to happen, they were smart enough to know that anytime there's people in power, sometimes it goes to their head, and they'll start lording that power over the people. So they realized that they needed to, now that they have, filled out the Constitution and established the government, they had to drop a little addendum to that, that was about the people, for the people. And so the Constitution established the government, but they come up with a Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights was the rights of the people and their freedoms and liberties that shall not be infringed upon from the government that they just established. So they established a government, then they had to draw up another part to this to go, now that we've established this government, we do not want this government to walk all over people and infringe things and impose some kind of bullshit into their lives, so we're going to draw this up. People have a right to speak their mind. People have a right to keep and bear arms. There's freedom of the press. There's all of these things, and these rights cannot be infringed on by a tyrannical government. So they established a government, and they didn't want the government to become tyrannical, but if it did, the people had these rights under which they could live where the government could not just tread all over them. And I think it's so funny that this whole MAGA thing, all these people on the far right, these extremists, talk about don't tread on me. And, they're waving their flags and they're talking about being patriots, but I don't think they probably understand what the Constitution really is. They can tell you about the Second Amendment, but what's funny about that now is, where's all those people now? Where's all those people now going, hey, we got the Second Amendment, we got this, you got freedom of speech, you got don't tread on me? Where are they at now? Are they still screaming that? Because it seems to me like they're all a bunch of cucks for Donald Trump, laying down and letting a tyrannical government walk all over everyone. Some of them joined up part of the tyrannical government and have become a bunch of Nazi thugs, and they're going around violating people's rights. So I would like to inform the governor of Minnesota and the governor of these states to realize what the Bill of Rights really stands for. Okay, and people go Second Amendment, that's so I keep a gun to protect myself. Well, yeah, it goes without saying you have a right to defend yourself, but that wasn't really what they were talking about. What they were talking about back then was they had like the Minutemen, they had people like that. They were basically armed citizens. They got together and they formed a outfitted militia to keep their rights from being violated. So if the government sent people down there, was going door to door, violating people just walking into their house, catching people on the streets and harassing them and doing stuff like that, that government would have to stand against that well-formed militia. Well, now we've transitioned all these many, many years later, and we still have that. It's called the National Guard. And the National Guard was formed to protect not just our homeland, but to protect the sovereignty of the state. So every state has a National Guard. And if the government was smart, the governors of these states were smart, they would realize that they have the power to call up those National Guard and bring them into their state and activate them within their state to protect the citizens of that state. These people that are protesting have a right to protest. You have a right to free speech. You have a right to assemble and protest. they always say, well, you can peacefully protest. Well, okay, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It didn't say that. You have a right to assemble, you have a right to protest. Throughout all of history, protests have not been peaceful. Sometimes sitting on your thumbs and just going, "Ooh, we don't like you, get out of here." That doesn't accomplish anything. But under that blanket of coverage, people can stand there and they can say, "Fuck ICE. Get the fuck out of our city. Quit violating our fucking rights." And they can stand all up and down the curb and they can blow whistles and beat drums and they can do whatever they want to protest these people being in their community and doing what they're doing. Now, if you look at the actions of ICE and what they're doing, they're violating people's rights. They are kidnapping and assaulting people, like literally, they chase a kid into Target, a 17-year-old kid, because he said "fuck you," basically, and they wrestle him down, hurt him, put him in a car, take him across town later and release him because he didn't really have anything they could arrest him for. He hadn't done anything wrong, but they brutalized him, and then when you see him, they had beat his ass. So they basically kidnapped a citizen and assaulted him. Now, if I went out into the Target, chased somebody down, tackled them, threw them in my car, beat their ass, and then let them out later, I would be charged with kidnapping, assault, everything they could charge me with, and I would be in jail. But because ICE is doing it, it makes it legal. No, that's not true at all. What you're seeing play out is a tyrannical government. That's what you're seeing. It's the very definition of what you're able to have your well-formed militia to combat against. And so if the governor was smart, he has every right, and all the evidence is there, to be able to bring the National Guard in and tell them people to get the fuck out of Minnesota. And if they're going to stay in Minnesota, they're going to do things the legal way. They're not going to violate people's rights. They're not going to create chaos or anything like that. Or they will face the military. They will face the National Guard, because the National Guard is there as a well-formed militia to protect the citizens from a tyrannical government. Basically, that's as plain as you can put it. And that's the whole definition of the Second Amendment. That is what it's talking about. And it fits into the law. It's lawful what they're doing, and no one can say anything different than that. It's a lawful definition of it. And if you want to argue it, you want to fight it all the way to the Supreme Court, unless the Supreme Court bows down and bends over and takes one from Donald Trump, because they're a cuck court for Donald Trump, they would have to rule in the favor of the governor and the National Guard being there to protect the citizens, because that's the whole foundation of what our country was founded under, and that's what it means. That's what it's about, and you can't really get police, or you can't really get the National Guard to do policing, like arresting people, charging people with crimes. That's not really what you can use them for. What you can use them to protect the citizens from these tyrannical government thugs. But at the same time, if you break the law, no one is above the law, not even the president. I don't care what he says, absolute immunity. That's bullshit. Nobody's above the law. If Donald Trump went down on Main Street and shot someone, you're not, unless it was self-defense, you're not going to justify him as the president can be charged with a crime, and I don't give a shit what anybody says. Unless he was doing it according to the Supreme Court, unless he was doing it within his duties as president. But like if he just literally just went out and shot someone or robbed someone on Main Street, he could be thrown in jail. And that's it. No one is above the law. I don't care. And if an ICE agent's violating someone's rights, they should be charged with that. If an ICE agent assaults someone, an unarmed person, and assaults them, and they are not under direct like trying to defend themselves, then they can be charged with a crime. Now, if they come somewhere to a home and they have a judicial warrant signed by a judge to arrest a person that's within that home, they have every right to, depending on whether it's a no-knock warrant or a knock warrant, they have the legal duty to uphold that and serve that warrant and arrest that person. At that point, everyone would have to back away and let them get that person and not interfere, because if they did at that point, they would be interfering in their duties, and that's a crime, impeding them from being able to do their job. But if you're just going down the street going, let me see your papers, like they did in Nazi Germany, those people do not have to identify themselves. They do not have to give any proof, no ID or nothing. If they haven't committed a crime and there's not probable cause to believe that they're a criminal. And if you're walking down the street and walking your dog, or you're mowing your lawn, and they don't have a judicial warrant, they're more than welcome to come up and go, hey, can you give me your ID? And you can tell them to go fuck off. And at that point, they have to leave. They can't go any further than that. Now, if they want to continue to ask you questions and you want to answer the questions, then you're volunteering. But they can't force you to give them your ID. They can't force you to identify yourself. They can't force you to identify your status or the nature of why you're in this country, or whether you're a U.S. citizen or not. You don't have to answer their questions. You can tell them to get the fuck on. If they don't have a judicial warrant for your arrest, or they don't have probable cause to believe that you committed some sort of crime, then that's it. And before, the Supreme Court kind of like said, hey, you can like target these people based on their race or how they speak, or if it looks like there's evidence that maybe they're, but the truth is they're going to have to reverse that, because that's bullshit. You can't use racial profiling to target someone. And the problem with that is you go into a lot of indigenous, like mostly indigenous populated areas like Albuquerque, New Mexico, Phoenix, Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, a lot of South Texas, around Corpus Christi, places like that. There are people that are citizens. Their parents were citizens. Their parents' parents were citizens. But they're descendants of indigenous people, so they're going to look like they're from Mexico or South America. And a lot of them still speak Spanish. But they speak English too, and maybe they speak Spanish better than English, so they have an accent. So you're going to be targeting people that are citizens based on the color of their skin. And that's racial profiling, and that's against the law. And I don't care what the Supreme Court says. They can try to change that. They can try to do that. But in the end, when they make their final decision about it, they're going to have to write some addendums to the fact of, like, it has to be more qualifying evidence that this person is unlawfully here. You cannot target them just based on, oh, I heard the guy speak Spanish, or he looks, Latin, or he looks black and his English was broken, so it sounded like he was from Nigeria or something, because then you're just bothering the regular people. But, I guess where I'm going with this, and I'm just kind of rambling along here, but where I'm going is, like, the governor, whilst up there in Minnesota, could literally call the National Guard in and have a conference with them and say, we're not going to have our citizens' rights violated anymore. And if these people are just walking around lawlessly, grabbing people and trying to force them into giving their identity if they won't fingerprint them and doing all these things like this, they're violating those people's rights. And those are moves by a tyrannical government, and we're not going to let that happen. So you're going to be there to protect our citizens, because that's your job as a well-formed militia, to protect the common everyday people in this country from a tyrannical government, and that's it. And, I've heard a lot of talk lately about abolishing ICE and, redoing things. I 100% think that we don't need ICE. 100% think it's a rogue organization. We don't need it. For years and years, we had Border Patrol, to guard our borders. We've got policemen to do our policing and things like that. I do believe in border security. I believe that we need to know who's coming to our country, and that's all good. I'll agree with that. But the people that have been here for 20, 30 years and have never committed a crime and they're not a threat, I don't understand why we need a bunch of draconian thugs going around making a $50,000 bonus, getting $275 a day per diem, and drawing a salary, and going into the communities and disrupting everything that's going on in the communities, from having to close schools, close businesses, blocking streets, running up and down with this lawless attitude. And especially a bunch of untrained people running around with guns, because I guess there's been, news and things that have come out, evidence that's come out that they're not really being trained. They were hired with AI, and if they said, hey, I want to be an officer, they decided that maybe they had, law enforcement background because there was an officer somewhere in their resume, and so they didn't even send them to training, let them take a little 4-week course online, put a badge and a gun on them, give them a $50,000 bonus, and send them out to terrorize everybody. They don't even know who the fuck they're hiring. So, that's a whole nother deal. We're supposed to vet people before they come into America, but we don't vet the police that carry guns in our streets. We don't know if they're criminals, if they got felony backgrounds, whatever. There was a lady that was talking the other day. She went in and filled out an application just to see what the hiring process was. And then they said, hey, go take a drug test. She literally knew she couldn't pass a drug test because she smokes marijuana. And so she went and took the drug test. And then, they made her an offer. They hadn't checked her background or anything. And she had some domestic violence things. She had some other things on her record. But I really think that this administration, that's what they're looking for. I think they want Proud Boys. I think they want January 6ers that storm the Capitol, that try to hang Mike Pence and try to, disrupt our government. I think they want a bunch of thugs that are a bunch of racist, white supremacist thugs working at ICE. And I think they're doing it on purpose. And to see what they're doing and pay attention, it doesn't seem like they're going in there actually targeting people that might have criminal records. They're targeting anybody and everybody based on the color of their skin, and that's just all it is, straight up. And there's no judicial warrants, there's no nothing, there's no intel or anything that goes into their operations. They're just going door to door going, hey, give me your papers, like they did in Nazi Germany years ago. You couldn't leave the house without your credentials or your papers because they'd stopped it, and they were trying to figure out who was who. And even if you had papers, if you were kind of a minority, if you were Jewish, or if you happen to be black, or you happen to be a person of color, those Nazi thugs was going to grab you up anyway and send you to the gas chamber because they were trying to ethnically cleanse their country. And I'm sorry, but I'm not down with that. I'm not down with that. I think there's a lot of people that's not down with that. If most of these far-right MAGA extremist supporters and the older people that are like, oh, Donald Trump, and he's going to fix America, if they knew what was really going on and they turned Fox News off and watched anything else and seen the truth of what was going on, it wasn't having a bunch of bullshit crammed down their throat from this Donald Trump cuck supporting media that makes him out to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, they would be against this stuff. They'd be like, hey, wait a minute, they're treading on people. And we don't want to be treading on. They're violating people's rights. That's not cool. Because I think, if they weren't just being fed misinformation from the media and fake news, it says fake news, it's funny how people gaslight you and they call you something and they say the same thing over and over and over and over again. Well, they're actually doing what they're saying that everyone else is doing, and I think they just do that to take the focus off of themselves, because if they're pointing over here, everybody's looking over there to see, hey, what's going on over there? Hey, they're doing this or doing that, And so in the end, there you are, that's what's been going on. But if I was the governor, I'd call in the National Guard. Our citizens are not going to be harassed. They're not going to have their rights violated. And you have a right to defend them and take action against these guys. And it would stop. It would stop then. And I mean, I'm sure if they did that, it would escalate things. It would create an all-out war between Washington and some of these states. But he's doing it for one reason. He doesn't have support of Minnesota. They're not going to vote for Donald Trump. Probably didn't vote for him. He said, I won that 3 times. He did not. No, he didn't. He won once, the state of Minnesota. And it's all based on these Democratic states. That's what it is. He doesn't like Democrats. He thinks they're the enemy. He seems to think he's got it all figured out. And so he's just targeting them. That's exactly what he's doing. He's targeting them. So that's what it comes down to. And I'm sorry I'm driving. I'm on my way back to, I'm on my way home. I just delivered a unit to Wisconsin Rapids. It was snowing. And I slept last night. Now I'm going to head home. So do it all again. Got to make as much money as you can in this economy. I'm telling you, you got to work twice as hard because everything's 2 or 3 times as expensive. So, but it's like we're living in the golden ages, right? This is the golden ages. Like Trump says, oh, it's the golden ages. Well, I don't know. I don't want to see poverty then if this is the golden ages because I don't know where everybody else stands, but this is pretty rough. But you know, I heard a lady, that's another whole story. I'm going to try not to chase too many rabbits and get off topic, but I heard a lady last night talking about, she was from the health department, like Health and Human Services, working under the moron, you know, that thinks Tylenol causes autism, you know. But anyway, she said that there's ways for the American people to eat for $3 or less per meal. And, like, you can have a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, you know, and then like a tortilla and maybe one other item, and you can keep your meals down to $3 or less. Come the fuck on, dude. Are you fucking kidding me? Donald Trump will sit down and eat 1,800 calories in one meal of McDonald's, bro. Like his McDonald's meal right now would be $25 by the time he had a Big Mac and flint fish and quarter pounder and all the shit that he eats in one setting, you know. And this is coming from these government people that like literally go to a $10,000 plate lunch. Like they literally, he goes to Mar-a-Lago where you get to eat the old surf and turf, the steak and shrimp and all the stuff, and it's probably $100 and it probably tastes like garbage, you know. It's probably not even really cooked that well, and it'd be like $100 for your meal if you didn't have drinks or anything, because it's like overpriced. And this is the way that they eat every single day and what they do. But the American people are supposed to eat a piece of chicken, a broccoli spear, and 3 grains of rice and a tortilla, right? And so they can eat for $3. Why should we have to do that, bro? Why should we have to do that? That's ridiculous. Why can't we eat? You know, why can't we have something to eat? Why can't it be affordable for us to have food? You know? So, you know, I'm going to eat because I work, you know. I'm going to eat because I work hard, and I'm usually on the road, so I have to eat out. So I've paid attention to the prices. And the day of the $5 footlong at Subway is long gone, bro. Like, it's long gone. Like, you go get the basic Subway sandwich, and I'm talking about without a drink, without cookies, without chips, not making it a meal, a foot long, wheat, chicken bacon ranch sandwich, and you add a little guacamole or something, dude, you're $13 to $15, depending on where you're at. They had a CDL driver appreciation week, and if you bought a foot long, you got one free. That was kind of nice that week. It got things back down into perspective, you know. You bought 2 foot longs for $15, and you know, so that was $7.50 a piece. That wasn't bad. But I remember when you could get a $5 footlong, they had the certain substance you could buy and put what you kind of wanted on over there, you know, pickles, tomatoes, whatever, and it was $5 footlong. That's what it was, plus tax, you know. But those days are long gone by. You know, $10 for a pound of hamburger meat when you used to get it for about $3.50 if you bought the little rolls. If you bought the better meat, you know, you might be at $4 or $5. You know, so. But like these people are just insane. They want us to eat a piece of chicken, a broccoli spear, a couple grains of rice, and that'll help us tighten our budget so that we can make it through this. And that's what they're saying. And then on the other side over there, on the mic across several states over, Donald Trump's talking to the media going, we're in the golden ages. So the golden ages is, hey, keep your belt tight, eat a piece of chicken, 3 grains of rice, and a tortilla and a broccoli spear, bro. You know, okay, that's what we want to do. So, you know, that's one thing. But then I'll hit a little bit on this Iran deal. You know, they got some shit going on over there, people being killed, whatever. We're gonna invade, we're not gonna invade, we don't know what we're gonna do over there. But I read a little article this morning and they said that they had put out a hit on Donald Trump, you know. And, you know, I think it was on Facebook or something, and I was laughing at the comments. You know, some people was like, hey, you know. And, you know, of course, I got to get on there and make my comments, you know. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know, like, they're having meetings all over the world now, but we're not invited, you know, because he's making enemies, man, the things he's doing. We're going to invade this country. We're going to invade that country. We're going to take over. We're going to take over that country, and it can be done the easy way or the hard way, you know. And used to, you know, you'd hear, oh, well, you know, China's an existential threat, Russia's an existential threat. Then it's like, oh, they're bringing drugs in their country and all this, they're an existential threat. The United States has become the existential threat. They're having meetings going, hey, what are we going to do about this rogue regime? Dude, look what they're doing. They went and kidnapped the president of a sovereign country. You know, whether he was legitimate or not, I mean, we're not going to argue about the facts. I mean, like Maduro's a piece of shit. And I get it. You know, Venezuela, there's a lot of good people in Venezuela, and he's oppressed them, and he's done all this, you know. We won't argue that the leader of Iran and shit oppresses the people, and he does all that kind of stuff, you know. You can look at Netanyahu over there in Israel. Look what he's doing to the Palestinian people. You know, as far as I'm concerned, he's a piece of shit. He's a war criminal. I mean, they've carried out just mass genocide over there. You know, people can say what they want to say about that. I support the people of Israel, like God's people, Israel, the nation, God of God. But I don't support Netanyahu and the IDF and their bullshit communist oppression and genocide and just basically terrorism over there. And I don't support that at all, you know. And I have a right to not support that. And I'm not anti-Semitic just because I believe that, you know. I'm not anti-American because I hate Donald Trump. I can't stand him, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, all them fake bastards, Kristi Noem, all these unqualified people in this fucking regime. He just picked people that he knew would lick his nuts from the back. That's it. People that would bow down and kiss his fucking boots and give him praises and shit. And it makes you just sick to watch it. Like, and if anybody can sit there and watch what these people are doing, and it doesn't turn their stomach and make their food come back up in their throat, then there's something wrong with them. Like, these people literally get in there and they just kiss his ass, you know, and oh, Mr. President, we're just so lucky to have you. You're just the greatest president with all the wonderful things you're doing and the golden ages that we're living in and blah, 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 blah. And it's like there's none of it true. And I mean, what turns your stomach more about it is the people saying it don't even really believe what they're saying. They're going out of the way to say it. And you can even tell it's fake. I mean, I can tell it's fake. It's like when you're talking to a little child, you know, and you're like, oh, you did so good on your test, and oh, you get a little happy sticker, and, you know, or you did good by pooping in the potty. We're going to put a poopy sticker on your little card on the refrigerator because you did good. You peed in the potty, you know. And that's the way it sounds. That's the way it comes across because that's the way it is. They don't even believe what they're saying. The truth about it is, if you give them all a shot of sodium pentothal, they would probably tell this is the worst egotistical piece of shit, trash, garbage motherfucker that I've ever worked for. We've seen the files. He's probably a pedo, you know, and all this. But he's in charge, and we have to bow down to him because we got to have our little position. That's basically like, I've quit jobs because I won't kiss a boss's ass. Dude, I'll go find another job. So, I've quit good jobs. You know, I look back and go, well, should I have, maybe? No, nope, I'm not a sellout. I'm not going to let somebody tread all over me and down talk me and, you know, keep trotting all over me and my rights and, you know, create chaos in my mind and in my heart and all that stuff. And I'm going to have a good day every day, you know. I'm going to do something I enjoy doing, and I'm not going to have. That's why I do what I do now. I do transport work. They don't give me a hard time. I call and go, hey, I'll take this unit. They go, okay, they send me over the paperwork. They load a little bit of money, and I go do it. I turn in, you know, paperwork and stuff where I sign. I take pictures, make sure the unit's not damaged. These new units were delivered, new trucks and buses and whatnot. And, you know, I don't have to work for some moron anymore over the road working for some company, you know. I had my own company, had 5 trucks, and then I went through a divorce. And in Oklahoma, it's a 50-50 state. So, you know, you could have busted your ass, worked hard, built the company from the ground up. But if you were married while you were building that company, whether they partook in building any of it or just give you living hell every day and spend all the money you made, in the end, it's 50-50. And I was basically told, you know, you can keep running this company for the rest of your life and give her 50% of the profits, or you can sell it out, split it down, and walk away. And I thought, that sounds like a good option, so I did that. You know, I just sold it all out. And so since then, I've just worked for someone else, you know. Kind of had to dissolve that company. Divorce will do that. Make good choices so you marry, you know. So that's a whole nother episode we could talk about, but we won't get into that. But in the end, you know, it's like, I'm not going to do that, but these guys seem to be, and you can tell. I mean, you can see it in their, and everything they say, how they address him and do stuff like, I mean, it's like, and it doesn't bother him. It makes him happy for them to do that. Oh, you're so great. You're so wonderful. And, oh, you did such a good job. And, oh, yay, you know. We're just so fortunate to have someone like you, Daddy Trump, you know. Just, you know, makes us want, you know. And it's just so ridiculous, man. But back to the subject, like, they're having meetings all over the world going, what are we going to do about these guys? Donald Trump's not invited to those meetings. No one from his regime, that's what it is. It's a fucking regime, dude. It's not an administration, you know. There's nothing American about what's going on. There's nothing patriotic about what's going on. You know, they're just walking all over people's rights. They're walking all over everything that's ever been accomplished from day one we became a country. They're walking all over our allies. They're shitting down everybody's neck. They're taking things by force. He's using taxpayer dollars to fund the military to go in there and, like, literally steal oil and shit. Like they sold their first tanker of oil, like yesterday or the day before yesterday, $500 million, $500,000. And they opened an offshore bank account in Qatar, and that's where they're putting the money. And I guess Marco Rubio and Donald Trump are the executors of that. So, like, could you imagine, you know? And I'm going to go here because, like, it's like everything that's bad was because of Joe Biden, Barack Obama, whatever, it's fucking Democrats, you know, that's what they say. But everything's good, oh, it's Donald Trump and what he did. So if the numbers come in bad, well, we're still trying to fix that. That was bad from the old administration, yeah, you know. But could you imagine if Joe Biden seized an oil tanker from any country, doesn't matter, and, like, sold the fucking oil and put $500 million into an offshore bank account in Qatar? They would have brought him up on charges of high crimes and misdemeanors and locked him the fuck up, dude. He would be spending his last days with his metastatic prostate cancer, all that shit, in jail. He wouldn't pass go. He wouldn't collect $200 because it's not monopoly. They'd have locked him up. They'd have done the same thing to Barack Obama. They'd have done it to Bill Clinton. They'd have done it to George Bush. But I guess we just live in a different time now, where some criminal, felon, most likely pedo, piece of trash who's basically just a dictator and a terrorist can use our taxpayer dollars to fund the military to go be a pirate on the open sea and to steal resources from a sovereign nation, sell those resources, and put the money in a bank account in his name in another country, an offshore bank account. Why do we need an offshore bank account? Why can't we just put it in the U.S. Treasury? Does he know something we don't know? Maybe the dollar's going to drop out and he needs it to be in a foreign currency in another place. Why Qatar, of all places, where the regime is like a terrorist regime? But the shit Donald Trump's doing now like makes Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein and them look like choir boys, like saints. I mean, look. And when are people going to wake up and see that? Like, for God's sake, look, we murder people without any due process in the ocean in fishing boats. We went in and murdered over 100 Venezuelan people. Some of them were security forces, whatever, but we got Maduro and we brought him up on drug charges because he's supposedly this big drug trafficker. But we do that only days, maybe weeks after we pardoned a guy that had brought 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. So it's not under the guise of that. I mean, let's look what it really is. I'm going to steal the oil. I'm going to use the power and the strength of the United States government to do it. And then I'm going to put the money in an offshore bank account. I mean, think about it. It's like they're having these meetings all over the world and we're not invited there. Like, what are we going to do about these guys? Like, this is just crazy. These guys are, the United States is Nicolas Maduro. The United States government is the government of Cuba. The United States government is North Korea, China, Russia. That's who we are. That's who we are. That's who we became. All that stuff. So, in the end, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Everyone thinks that we're the terrorists, we're the existential threat. And that's kind of what I was talking about today. But, that is further, like, there's further proof of that by looking at what's going on our own streets and how we're treating our own citizens. We literally have a bunch of guys in military uniforms going around like they did in Nazi Germany going, show me your papers. And if you're an immigrant, they send you to a foreign prison camp, they deport you to a country that's not yours, brutalizing people, die in ICE custody, whatever. And he's trying to change the fact that, like, if you're born here, like, and you have a birth certificate, that doesn't automatically grant you citizenship, so you can't even be a citizen by being born in the country. He's trying to change that, but he hasn't been able to do that yet. So if you are indeed a citizen when they detain you, or they're fucking just out there harassing you and violating your rights, and you say anything to them, and they can't send you to CCOT to the prison, and they can't deport you to another country, other than where you were from, because they'd have to leave you here because you're a citizen, then they just fucking shoot you. That's what they do. They just fucking kill you. It's like, fucking, we'll just lean across the fucking hood, shoot you, fucking. Because you told me to have a good day and all of this. I don't care if that lady said fuck off. How does the neighbor's dicks taste when you kiss your wife? Do you taste all the whole neighborhood dicks when you give her a kiss? I don't care what kind of nasty shit she could have said to him. She has a right to say that stuff, man. And she I guess under there, they have a right to kill her, and that's where we're at. So we're the existential threat. We're the terrorists. We're the bad, terrible dictator regime. I mean, we're here. There we are. It's January, January 16th, 2026. So when I was younger as a Gen Xer, we was like, dude, we're going to party like it's 1999 because the world's going to end in 2000. Then they had Y2K, and they thought because computers couldn't calculate past the year 2000 that everything was going to crash. Well, it didn't happen, Then we see, the whole 9/11 thing happen. But I've lived through some shit, several wars, and, my stepdad, them was in Vietnam, and my grandpa and them was in World War II, and, they fought. They fought to keep us from being like Venezuela, like Qatar, like Russia, like China, like Iran, like North Korea. And like my grandpa, He died December 1st of 2021. The smartest, greatest man, the male figure in my life. He was a good Christian man, believed in the Bible, but he was a real patriot. Like a true patriot, not like these MAGA motherfuckers. Fuck them and their patriotism. They don't know what fucking patriotism is. But he was pro-America. He was America first. And he didn't mind. He would give money to missionaries to help people out in other countries. He believed, that everybody should, we're living in the greatest country in the world, I never asked him what his political affiliation was because it didn't mean anything back then. You just registered, When I was 18, I went and registered as a Democrat. I thought, well, it's what I am, I guess. I'm born in this area. It's whatever. And I didn't even really understand. Arkansas was a red state. Kind of dominated red. Bill Clinton was president then. When I went in the service, Bill Clinton was president. Bill Clinton was Democrat. It didn't bother me. I didn't think he was. He had immigration policies. He had this, that, and other. Yeah, he did some immoral things, but if that's all we had to worry about right now, if somebody blew old boy off in the White House or some intern, and that's all we had to worry about, then we're in the golden ages. That's what I look at now. That's pretty sad, isn't it? The immorality and all that. But Trump's being blew off by everybody. Trump gets blown off 20, 30, 40 times a day by everybody in his administration. Anybody that wants a position, anyone that wants to make money, anything, they've got to come bow down to the king and blow him off, So, I don't know. That's where we're at. January 16, 2026, the United States becomes communist USA, man. We're communist China, we're communist Russia on steroids. We're on steroids, and it gets worse. But what do? These governors get wise. No, we don't mind the military being in our city, kind of enforcing, keeping the peace and stuff. We don't have a problem with that because we're calling them to use them for what they were really designed, and that's to protect the citizens from tyranny, protect the citizens from a fucking tyrannical regime trying to impose their fucking will, trying to impose their fucking ideology, and all that shit on everybody. I'm a Christian, and I believe in Jesus. I believe he shed his blood, he died on the cross. You don't have to believe that way, and I'm not going to force you. Ask me, I'll tell you. I'll give you a plan of salvation. These guys come in the name of Christianity, and there's nothing Christian about them. Don't be fooled. They are turning people against God. They have people calling them Zionists, and people hate religion because of what these tyrannical piece of pedo, satanic, sacrilegious, criminal bastards are doing. Don't listen to what their Christianity is because it's a false religion. It's not. This is not a Christian movement. These sick, sadistic, barbarian, Neanderthal, low IQ fucking morons would have to get on their knees and ask forgiveness for the shit they're doing if Jesus showed up. Jesus, my Lord and Savior, would fashion a whip like he did in the stories of the Bible and run in there and fucking cast them out. He would whip their ass out of the fucking White House, dude. The money changers, just like the money changers. You got you criminal people coming in the name of God, in the house of God, screwing people out of their money and taking more for them to cash their money in so that they can give their tithes. Get the fuck out of here. That's what had happened. These motherfuckers, don't let them fool you. And it makes me mad. I'm fixing to get fired up about it because, there are people that are looking for something. And, and I'm a believer, and you don't have to be. And I'm not going to, sit here and preach all day to you, but I'm just going to say, there are people that are looking for something. And I, myself, personally love people, and I would want to see them find Jesus. And find a way that when they leave this world, they can be in heaven. Find a way to find some peace and solitude in something there, and to have, the peace and joy that having a relationship with God and the morals and values that surround that, gives you comfort and can break the chains of anything, sex addiction, pornography, all these things, and so these guys coming in the name of a Christian movement, but yet they're doing all this satanic garbage. It turns people off of that. It makes them go, yeah, they're Christians, But don't throw us in there with these fucking sickos because these fucking sickos don't know Jesus. They don't love Jesus. They don't know Jesus. They're using that for their own personal gain. They don't care about that. They don't believe you go anywhere when you die. Donald Trump, well, I hope I get to heaven. No. That golden escalator going down, down the bottom of it's fire and damnation, where they'll turn up the hell's 50,000 degrees on you, you pedo, piece of shit, satanic, oppressing, dictator, motherfucker that's fucked with everybody and cheated and robbed everybody in your whole fucking life, and you want people to bow down, you know, like the rich man in the Bible that chases Jesus down and says, hey, what have I got to do to be saved? He goes, well, the commandments? Oh, I've kept them every one. He can't even say that, you know. He's broke every one of them. And, you know, like, he could ask forgiveness and God would forgive him if it was true and he was actually being called on. But I think maybe some point in his life he had that opportunity and blew it off. He chose money and power and wealth and riches and like, positions and all of these things, and didn't care who he stepped on to get there, and like degrading women, grabbing them by the pussies and doing all this. It's like at this fucking point, anybody that follows this sick orange clown, there has to be something wrong with them. They're just as sick as he is. There's something wrong. Like, they need to be put in one of the mental institutions that he talks about all these people from other countries were released from, like the one on steroids, like you know, insane asylums, the one in, you know, steroids. Because, like, if you can't see it now and you still support that, then like, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. And I mean, I know that's a press of people's votes, but I mean, we got to do something, dude, because we just, you know, we're just in serious trouble. I don't know where it goes from here. It just goes down. I don't see it going up, you know. So, you know, that's what I want to talk about today. What's your opinions? You know, tell me what you think. You know, you think we're just doomed? You just think we're there? You think we're the existential threat? You know, like, comment, share, you know, subscribe. I'm trying to kind of do this, but I stay pretty busy. I was gonna, you know, try to put out several videos a day and stuff through my ventures. You see, I'm sitting in a car. I'm on my way doing stuff. I just pulled in here to get some fuel, but like, this is my platform, I guess, where I'm working from, because I have to work for a living, and I don't have a big rich channel. Don't care if it ever goes, you know, viral or anything. I mean, it'd be nice to get, you know, my opinions out and hear what other people's got to say. The more people on your channel that subscribe, watch your videos and stuff, you get different tags. It gives you a take on what, you know, people are like in America. And I think for the most part, people are good. I think most people just, you know, want to live their life. They want to have their families. They want to be able to work, put food on the table, and have a car in the garage, you know, and live their best life. Take a vacation once in a while and enjoy their life, you know. We all want plenty of money and do the best, but we don't live in a society like that right now. We live in a society where there's soon to be two classes of people, and that's the people that are digging through the garbage for food, and then the rich elite Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos class. And that's where we're headed. And they're going to see to it that happens. And we're always going to work for them, bow down to them, and be their servants. Where they can grab us by the pussies and get by with it. You know, I guess that's it. That's their mentality. That's what they do. That's how they think. So, you know, it's pretty sick and sad the world we live in now. And Donald Trump's made it worse. So, you know, but I mean, tell me your take on it. You know, like, subscribe, and share. You know, I'd like to get this channel going, and I'd like to be able to produce a little stuff for everybody each day, and, you know, kind of see where it goes. I've talked about years where I'm going to start a channel, and I just never have. So, you know, I even set it up, but just never really posted anything. So now I'm trying to post. So, you know, help me out if you like what I got to say. If you don't like what I got to say, shit, help me out anyway. Help a guy out. Help a brother out. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I might say something you agree with, or you may totally disagree, but you enjoy listening to me ramble on. You know, my ADHD kicks in, and I chase rabbits down holes. But anyway, I appreciate y'all. Be blessed. Love y'all. God bless, and have a good day.